Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. So, what I have to discuss and what I have to talk about is something that was introduced into my life when I was very young. I grew up in the 80s, and at that time, there was this whole thing with the whole crack epidemic. So, my parents, so not just my mom, but also my father, they had a substance use problem. And so I'll start kind of with that, but I have to go back just a little bit further because their lives, they didn't have the greatest lives either. Okay, so when I often think about over the time, what maybe led to them using substances, because there's different outlets for different people. But my mom, she didn't really have what she was to me. She didn't really have that mom that would pour into you. You know, the mom that would put your pictures up on the refrigerator, the little stick figures and the little scribbles. She didn't have that. My father didn't have that either. And they both had parents who struggled with substance use. So on one side, there was heroin. On the other side, there was alcoholism and some other substances. So when I was about 8 years old, I remember being picked up from school in a police car. I was in elementary, and so we talk about these traumatic events, things that happen in your life where they can be really traumatic. I was picked up in a police vehicle because I was at school. This was one of the, I want to say, few times that I went to school, because also during this time, we kind of moved around a lot, and I would be absent from school because I was sick. I wasn't ever really sick, but you gotta think, if the parents or whoever, if they're up all night partying, doing drugs, who's waking up to make sure the kids get breakfast and go to school? Okay, so it was just easier to say, oh, why isn't your daughter in school? She's sick. So after I was about 8 years old, and there was a report made to Child Protective Services. And because of the report that was made, the police showed up. I have three other sisters. I'm the only one that has a different father. Okay, so I'm kind of like this anomaly over here. There's my mom, my dad had me, and then my mom had three other daughters, and they all have the same father. So, which is why it's a bit different for me. I was put into foster care. When they picked me up, they took me to the courthouse. And at that time, my mom was in court, and she was trying to explain to them, you know, they were talking about how we didn't have food. And I have a YouTube channel, and there's a video where I do a spoken word piece called Crack Reparations. And in the background, I actually have the pictures of that they came in and took when they came to take us from her custody. So these were all a part of my records. I got them when I got older and wanted to write about my story. So I have those pictures, but so that's what they were looking at, you know, just the living conditions. Now, I will say, did we eat? Yes, we did eat. There was a lot of neglect. Because when you're not taking care of yourself, how can you really give what you're supposed to give to someone else? So they picked me up in a police car. They got my sisters, go to the courthouse, and then I hear my mom. I'm sitting in the back with a lady I didn't know, and my mom is very, you know, she's very upset. She was like, I take care of my kids. I don't know, what do you want me to do? If I don't have money for this, that, and the other, how do you expect me to get money? And she was very emotional, and I remember sitting there and I started crying. And I remember the lady, I don't remember her name, I just remember she was very nice. And she asked the judge, they was like, this is her daughter, can I take her out of here? Because then I started crying because my mom was crying. And so I remember sitting outside of the courtroom, and I just, you ever had a feeling where you know something's not right? And I didn't know what was happening, but I just knew after being picked up from school in the police car that I probably wasn't going back with my mom. Like, I'm like, I know the police. I was 8, so I didn't have a deep understanding, but I'm like, this is not a good thing. So my other 3 sisters, so we all went to foster care. The only difference for me is that when I went to foster care, I was actually fostered to my father and my stepmom, who wasn't my stepmom yet at the time. They were going to get married later, but so my father and his girlfriend, because he stood up in court and was like, I want my daughter. She's not going into the system. So they did a trial basis. And I was still considered to be in foster care. And so they could keep me and my sisters kind of together. We went to, I'm trying to remember the name. I can't think of it right now, but they're still Bethany Christian Services. We would have meetings. And my mom had some supervised visits. So there were conditions, like you need to be able to stay clean, this, that, and the other. So in my mind, because I'm 8, I'm like, Mom, just stop. Like, I don't want to live here. I don't want to live with my dad. I want to live with you. I just want to go visit him like I used to. I don't really want to live here. And I didn't care about my surroundings and everything else, because even though, you know, there was a lot of neglect for sure, she loved me. And I'm sorry, that it's a love I still carry. And it really transformed my life. My mom had me when she was 15. So in a lot of ways, she wasn't just my mom, she was like my sister, my best friend. And then subsequently, when I was in the 10th grade, she was raped and shot. And so then she kind of became, like I kind of became her mom. So this is all along the lines what got me my calling kind of into nursing, because she was at Mary Free Bed, and I was like, oh, I could really help you. And I saw that I was just really, you know, good and so I'm like, maybe I could be a nurse, or I could do this. It hadn't entered my mind before. What I wanted to be was a teacher. So I didn't want to be a nurse, I just wanted to be a teacher. So and I ended up doing both things. So that love. So when I talk about love, to me, it's more like a spiritual thing. So just like, you know, hate, like if somebody has this contempt towards you, that's something that you can feel. You can feel it in the way they respond to you, even in nonverbals. And so I remember, I always thought that I would be able to go live with my mom again. And once I was 9, it was finalized. She became a legal non-mother, so her parental rights were terminated. I was never able to live with her. My sisters, they went to live with their father. And their father decided he really didn't want them. He just didn't, a lot of these things, now let me say this, there was a lot of neglect. Now I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. However, I tried to think about how my mom felt, because I'm a mom. And if you take the one reason you may even have to hang on to life away, and then there's no hope of reconciliation, it's almost like, you know, what really is the point to continue on living? And then the reason why it was done. The reason it was done was, yeah, I mean, she made sure that, you know, we were clean and, you know, we had the basic things. But he also had a drug problem, my sister's father. He had a drug problem, and he was the one that introduced her to drugs initially. She was trying to get clean on her own, and she didn't want to be with him anymore. His mom was a social worker. They decided to file the case, and they put a lot of weight behind making sure, even though I went to visit her in drug treatment. I saw her going doing drug treatment and everything, and it didn't matter what she did. They were like, well, now you have to do this or you have to do that. And so they just took us away immediately. And the mom was the driving force behind that. And he didn't really want them. He thought that once I take this from her, then maybe we could get back together. So when she was like, no, I'm not getting back together with you, he gave the kids up. Now her parental rights are terminated, so she has no legal right. And then he even went so far to tell my sisters that they couldn't even call her mom. If they saw her on the street, they had to call her by her first name, Angela. So, and they were punished if they called her wrong. Now, I was 8 when I was taken away, 9 when the parental rights were terminated. My sisters were 4, 1, and I think 9 months. So, over the years, the last two, the 1-year-old and 9-month-old, they were what you would call crack babies. They were born addicted. My mother, I think she started using maybe when she was like 23. So I got a lot of the benefit of her before she was a drug addict. So I feel like that's what really impacted my life. And then also the reason why this is so near and dear to me, the recovery community, and why I still fight so hard for restoration and for helping people, because I remember before. And so where you might be able to sit on one hand and say, oh, well, just stop. You've lost so much. You don't have this, you don't have that. I just saw it firsthand. My mom, she lived her life very transparently before me, which is why I believe in transparency. I think at the point of transparency is a prime opportunity for transformation. My sisters, they were in and out of foster care. There was a big scandal even with the foster care. Some of the homes they went to, they were being sexually abused by the father in the home, and it was even in the news and everything. They ended up suing DHS, got a pretty sizable settlement, and all the money was gone within a year. Their father is still living and remarried. My mother did pass away at 51. That was another traumatic experience for me, because I always thought that we would have more time. And as long as she was living, she was in a wheelchair, so when she was raped and shot, she ended up being paraplegic afterwards. And she was like 30. So when you think about all the traumas that can happen in your life, I mean, she was abused as a child herself. Physical, sexual. She suffered a lot. And then she's older, trying to do things the right way. And then, crack comes around. She was already smoking marijuana. But so when I talk to people out in the community and they're telling me their stories, like, nobody just goes to full-blown addict, right? It starts somewhere. The big things always start small. And a lot of times I find that people do get high seeking the absence of pain. So whether that's a physical pain, a psychological pain, a spiritual pain, emotional pain, this is why they don't want to die, even if they go on an overdose. They just don't want to hurt. And then they're in the process of addiction. There's just not the psychological dependence, but then there's a physical dependence. So even when they want to stop, so then there's a guilt because they want to stop, but they can't, because now they need it to feel normal, or depending on what drug it is, to not feel dope sick. So they get into this cycle. And I will say with my parents, especially my mom, because she always told me the truth. Like, she would just tell me. I'd ask her and she'd tell me. I remember there being times where, like, she would always try, like, not to do drugs in front of us. So, but there was a period of time where, our house was like the house where everybody kind of congregated. And I will say this: if you have a bunch of adults getting together and they're partying and kids are there, who's watching the children? That is a prime time for any type of pedophile, predator, and there were definitely abuses and things that happened because they were all doing what they were doing, but then who's watching the children and who's protecting us? And me being the oldest, I think I was 6 or 7 at the time, trying to become everybody's protector, which is something that I feel that I still carry in a different way. I do a lot of mentoring and everything, but I like to try to help people and to help them see value in themselves. And sometimes when they have backgrounds where there's substance use, and I would say this because of what my parents went through. So me and my sisters, we all kind of took different paths. I was what you would call maybe the more frigid one. Like, I wouldn't drink alcohol, like I wouldn't even try a cigarette. Because when I asked my mom, she said, oh, well, I was smoking cigarettes. And then I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. Because to me, I just saw the pathway. I'm like, oh, I don't want to end up, strung out on drugs. So I said, I'm not going to do anything. So I was really, really like frigid for like a whole period of time. And then, then I have my sisters, they'll like smoke cigarettes, or some of them might smoke marijuana or whatever the case may be. But I just couldn't, I said it gave me an aversion. And then because I was taken away from the person I most loved in the world, it also gave me an enemy. And that's why I titled my book, The Crack Chronicles, Volume 1, Dissection of the Demon. Because to me, and especially when you're in the age of magical thinking from the age of 3 to 7, when you believe in the boogeyman and the monster, I literally saw my parents transform. I mean, they used to read stories or, all the typical things, take me places. And then I saw a lot of their time being spent with these strangers. I mean, there's people they knew, but, who was cooking for us. And then it was me becoming the primary caretaker of my 3 little sisters at 6 and 7. Like, I don't know really what I'm doing. I mean, I learned how to change diapers. I can make a peanut butter and jelly. Like, I could do, but some real food, some cooking. I don't really know what I'm doing, So it became, but it was normal to me, right? I didn't know anything different. And I would go to school. So I would go to school, and I remember there would be times my mom would be called in and they'd have to remind her that it was cold and I needed a coat, or that I needed a hat, or that I needed some mittens. And so as I'm reading all these reports and these documents of schools that I went to, and they're saying that they're having these conversations about basic things that I need in school, and I'm like, and I lived in Michigan, Grand Rapids area primarily, and a little bit in Holland most of the time, and I'm like, they had to tell her I needed a hat? Like, and I didn't even remember that. I'm little, so I didn't remember I didn't have a hat, or I didn't. I'm like, oh, so it added a different perspective and different layers. But if she had not been overcome by addiction, sometimes I wonder, what her life would be like, how we would be if she hadn't been raped and shot. And it was by 3 teenagers that they caught them, but it was 3 teenagers. If she hadn't been raped and shot, then what would life be like for her? Because to spend the rest of your adulthood from 30 years old in a wheelchair, a paraplegic, she still had the bullet, the one next to her spine, because they didn't want to remove it because it was too close to her spine, and having chronic pain. And then here we go, being prescribed opioids. You already have this substance use history. So the trajectory, she was the strongest person I ever knew. Now, another thing that I want to point out, which I think will give a little bit more insight into my mom. My mom was considered darker skin, okay? And she grew up in the time, she was born in the 60s, so she grew up in a time where what we would call colorism amongst African Americans, the lighter you are, the more acceptable, and she was darker skinned, so there was some bullying behind that, and she also had some issues with this scalp disease she had, so there was things wrong with her hair. So she started fighting like very, young, and she became like this protector person. And when she met my dad, which was her brother's friend, my dad is lighter skin, blue hazel eyes, and it was like this match made in heaven. And he was 3 years older than her. So she got pregnant with me at 14, had me at 15. Because my dad was 17 at the time. And when she passed away, this year made 7 years, 51. I was the first one to make it to the house. My grandmother called me. And that was another traumatic experience for me because I knew too much because I'd been a nurse a number of years, and I'm like, it took me 20 minutes to get over here, and I saw the ambulance, but the stretcher was still outside. So I'm like, that was 20 minutes, the stretcher stood here. And I looked at my now husband, he was my fiance then, and I'm like, something's not right. And I just kind of collapsed outside, and I'm like, this is not good. And why? Because unlike they show on TV, ambulance drivers, they cannot transport a dead body. So that's why they work on them. They try. And once they get a pulse, then they like, we're out of here. But they cannot transport a dead body. So if you don't have, and I'm processing all of this. I'm like, I got here as fast as I could. So I'm trying to go in the front door. They're working on it right there. They asked me to go around. I go through the garage. And as soon as I walk in, I hear them calling time of death. And they put a sheet over her. I see her arm hanging out of the sheet. And I said, I need to see her. You don't let me see her. I have to know that, like, this is a real thing. I have to see her. They wouldn't let me see her. They wouldn't let me see her for 2 hours until the medical examiner came because it was a home death and the police, like all this stuff. And I know I keep mentioning TV. The reason why I keep mentioning TV is because, I don't know, because I watch TV and I expect them to represent the reality of situations, right? Like literally, like this, it was so funny. Like, because when I had my son at 18, I literally, all I knew about having a baby was what I saw in General Hospital. And you know how that goes. So you know the medical staff was laughing at me because you know what I said? After I'm pushing, get them out, I'm out ready to take a break and, everything be nice and cute. And they said, keep pushing. And you know what I said? I said, what, there's another one? And they was like, no, the placenta? I said, that's not what Sunny Chronicles did. And they started laughing, and I'm like, but I'm serious. I'm serious. Like, that's not what they, on General Hospital, I watch this every day with my mom. When I got home out of high school, came on at 3 o'clock, got out at 2 something, that was our thing, we watched it, and I never saw a placenta. They just would push the baby out, and so this is my whole thing, like Hollywood has deceived me. Like, they're not giving the full story. And then, so it was like another one of those things that I'm trying to put together. I'm like, so that wasn't reality. This is the truth of it. And when you grow up the way I did, when I went to my dad and my stepmom's care, I was 9 years old and everything became official. And then my dad married my stepmom, and so I was fortunate because I got to have 2 women that loved me a lot. And they never kept me from my mom. Never. My sisters, they weren't really allowed to visit with my mom, but I could go see her every other weekend. I would look forward to those weekends. But you know what would happen to me was I would go over there Friday, and then early Sunday morning, I'm sad and crying all day because I have to leave. And so when I would come back home, I would just be sad for the next 2 days. And there's a lot of sad and a lot of crying, and they didn't really understand. They didn't know. They was like, well, you can still see her. Like, I don't, you just don't live there. But it wasn't what I wanted. And the way it happened was so traumatic. And there's this term I use called the do man. And the do man is just what I call the trauma, the grief, the things that we stuff down, that we don't deal with. And that's what I did most of my life. I'm like, I don't have time for this. Like, I can't really be sad about this because I'm trying to finish school where I'm at. So when I'm done, or, when it's spring break, I take a nap. But until then, I need to keep moving. So I would just push myself and push myself and push myself and keep going and keep going and keep going. Well, you can only sustain that for so long. Because at the end of this, we all deal with this thing called healing. And I did the best I could, being a teen parent, giving all the love that I could possibly give to my son. And I thought for the longest time that because I wasn't using substances that I had no issues. Oh, that old dude man came a knocking. And I realized that, kids learn a couple of ways. By what they observe and by how they're treated. And because what I observed gave me a lot of aversions to things, and then I was treated with love and then neglected, it created this situation for me where I always felt like if I had people in my presence that I don't ever want people to feel cheated when they're in my presence. Like, it gave me a real, and I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing, but it gave me a real, like, if we're having a conversation and we're conversing, you know that I'm in this conversation with you. I'm taking time to spend with you, to answer your questions. Because it had me look at time and value in the presence of people in a very real and different way. It is also how I learned that there is definite power in your presence. When I was 9 years old, my mother was in treatment. She was finishing out her treatment, which is commendable, and we lived right around the corner. And so I used to walk around the corner to visit her on family visitation day. And I also grew up at a time where it wasn't, if you felt something, you can't be disrespectful. So a lot of what I felt, the only way I could let it out was to write. Okay, so I just would write, and I would write poetry. And I remember I wrote my very, very ever first poem that I remember at 9, and it was called Crack. Not Roses Are Red, Violets Are Blue. My first poem at 9 was called Crack. And it was a poem of personification, and it was crack talking to people, saying how it would destroy you and everything. And I wrote this at 9. And I remember I was so proud of my little poem. I went up to the treatment center to see my mom, and I said, "Look, Mom, I wrote this poem." Now, she knows a lot of it. She was the motivation for a lot of it, right? Her, my father, she knows this, right? So instead of feeling like, "Oh, don't say that," or "don't," she was like, "Can you get up and read that in front of everybody?" And I said, so I get up with my little papers and I read it. I'm like a dangerous journey with no return back. I'm a grave digger, but you can call me Crack. That's how it started. So I was reading it, and then, I see people start crying. These other people in recovery and family members, and they start crying. And then my mom stood up looking so proud, and she said, "I inspired that." But only a mother would say something like that, right? So that was to me one of those pivotal times, because had she been hurt by it, or I might have never written anything again. And so I decided to put that. It is really, you could tell I was probably 9 when I wrote it, but it was just to show that pain doesn't leave you, but also love doesn't leave you either. And so for me, it was my way to kind of fight and to kind of let her know that, hey, I know you love me. Things got a little bit crazy for you, but I'm fighting with you, because I didn't know what else I could do except fight for you. When you love people, you should show up for them. And that was my way of showing up. And so she was like, so I started writing. Just over the years, I just kept writing. And then I would meet people, and they would say, "Oh, well, my mom was on heroin," or other children. And they were like, "You really, really love your parents." And I said, "Well, yeah. Yeah, I do love them, because this, that, and I would remember all these good things." And part of my little flower, which is my signature, my dad, he put the first flower ever in my hair. I was probably about 4 years old, and I was his Valentine. Every Valentine's, he'd come get me, we'd go to the park, and he'd put a flower in my hair, he'd bring me some flowers. And so I just remember these things. And they said, well, I'm upset with my parents because of this, that, and happened. Or they would go looking for their parents in the dope house and end up on drugs themselves. So they would look at me like, how did you, like, I'm trying to understand. And the fact that when I'm so transparent in my writing and in my story, that they're like, I want to get to where you are in the sense of freedom, in the sense of not allowing it to hold you back. Well, at the time, I didn't realize that there were some ways that it did hold me back. It wasn't the obvious things, because I wasn't doing the drinking, the drugs, or anything else, but I became very, I don't want to say this, my issues, my trust issues. So I'll use an example, like with my daughter. She's never been to daycare. Not because there's not good daycare, it's just that I don't trust people. Because I don't really necessarily know what you're doing. And you know what I don't want to have? I don't want to have one of those stories like my mom had, like I ended up having subsequently. While you were at work, Slicky Slime did this to me. Like I just know if you in my presence, I know what's happening. So it made me not, like I have my life where I don't feel like my life is small by any means, but I do. She's 5 years old, so I kind of, there's stuff that a lot of things I don't do because I'm at home. I'm at home with her, taking care of her and making sure and overseeing everything. Now, that is not sustainable either, because sometimes you're going to have other stuff to do in life. There's other things you're going to need to do, other places you're going to need to go. And I have a very small circle of people that I trust my daughter with. And not because I think that people are just going to start doing weird things to her, but these are the people that I know, because they've been in my life for so long, that I could actually come to work and not worry about her. And not even have to entertain a thought or have these questions or look at things strange. So it made me become a bit overprotective in some ways. And when I was raising my son, I was so happy that he wasn't like out in the streets and that he didn't answer the call to come to the streets and sell drugs. So it was fine with me that he was at home playing video games and everything else. It really, matter of fact, because I knew when I came home, he would be there. And I was so happy. I was so happy because I had friends that had to go visit their kids in the graveyard. And I didn't at 14, 15. They're already dead, gun violence. I didn't have those issues. So that made me grateful in a sense. And I tried to do my best as being a single parent. And I got married later in my life. And it was that reason, like I had this just fundamental mistrust of people. Like I can't leave you with my kid, even my son. Like I'm not just that way with my daughter, but I was that way with my son. And that's why she's just one of him for all this time. And I think he was 18 when my daughter was born. Like it was just the one, because I had to do it. I had to oversee every single thing. And I realized that I was operating out of what I would call a diminished capacity. Because when I was in nursing school, the second time, and I went to community college, because when I had my son, I had dreams. Like I wanted to go to Spelman. I had this whole plan. It was a good plan too. I wrote it when I was in elementary. And the plan was this. I was gonna go to Spelman and be a Spelman lady. And my husband was going to be at Morehouse, and he was going to be a stepper. You know, he was going to be doing this. And I was like, that's when we would go on dates, and then we would go step. Now, that was my whole plan. Like, but I didn't even know what I was going to do in school. But that was my idea. Because back then, I saw the Cosby Show and the HBCUs. Like, so here we go with TV again. But I thought it was a good thing to aspire to. But when I was 18, I was like, I can't go away. I don't know anybody. And I was like, who would keep my son? So I'm like, I have to stay here. I said, I can't go anywhere. So, I enrolled in community college. I did, and I met so many great people. I'm glad I did. It was GRCC. I did the LPN program, and then I did the RN program. Well, my mom, she would get sick from her being in the wheelchair. She would have pressure ulcers and things of that nature. She would need help and different cares. And I remember going to school from her bedside. Like I would bring my nurse uniform, and I would go. And so I would always stay in contact with my teachers, not because I was asking them, like, can I not come to clinical, or I might not, but I just wanted to let them know kind of what was going on. Like, if you notice a little difference, this is kind of what's going on, things are okay. And I remember one of the teachers pulled me to the side, and they said, well, we had a test. and I really didn't have a lot of time to study for it, but I did really well on this test, better than I thought I would do, but I'm like, look, either I know it or I don't. I'm just going to take this test. And they pulled me to the side. They were like, you did an excellent job on this test, and you had a really difficult week. And I said, I did? They said, yeah, your mom's in the ICU. And I was like, well, yeah, but I see, that's another thing. Because I had been experiencing so much trauma and our roles were reversed a bit early, I didn't even think that that was that was just me doing what I do. I had been stepping in, taking care of kids, taking care of my mom for as long as I could remember. So I'm like, oh, that was a difficult week. I said, oh, I guess it is. If you gotta, and then I had to put her IV in when I was in the hospital because they couldn't get it. But no, all this stuff, I'm doing all these different things, and I became her caregiver. And then I look back, every time she was in the hospital, I never saw her mom come visit her. I never saw, her brothers and sisters, anybody come visit her. And I remember when I was trying to reconcile with the fact that, okay, I won't see her again in this life after she passed. And I had all these weird thoughts. Because after a life of so much pain, that was a pain because once a person dies, there is no hope of reconciliation. Like that, where we can go run together and meet in a field of flowers and hug. Like, that's all gone because she's not here anymore. So I'm like, oh, and I had so many questions. Like, I wanted to know about me, like when I was little, and there was stuff that I wanted to know, and I'm like, I don't have her story, her voice, her history anymore. So when I was reconciling with the fact that she wasn't going to be here anymore, and I had a decision. And this is a decision that people don't always make the decision. No, Siri, I'm not talking to you. Here's what I'm talking. This is a decision that people don't always make the way that I did. I did have some thoughts in my head, and it was not like my voice. Like, it was these thoughts, and it was saying things like, well, you read the Bible, and the Bible says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. I'm like, yeah, that's true. So, but you would think that this would be comforting, because you say, oh, well, your mom's in heaven, or, or she's with God or whatever. But that wasn't what it was telling me. It's like, if you want to be with her, be absent from your body. Like, it was this real, and it wasn't even my, how your own internal voice sounds? Like, this was, because I was on the floor crying, I remember this day. And it just kept interrupting my grief. And I'm like, I'm just trying to cry. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, if y'all know you're going to let me cry, like, then this would make me madder. So I remember standing up. I was in my son's room, because I had to hide from my family. Because, the family love you, so they want to come make sure you're okay and checking on you. But I needed to be left alone. Like, I needed to kind of sit in it and let it, like, this is real. And I'm laying on the floor, and I got up, and I remember saying, these are not my thoughts. And I don't know where this is coming from. Like, these are not my thoughts. And I'm like, I'm just sad right now. And I'm like, I can't even be allowed, whatever's happened, it's not even allowing me just to cry for my mom that just died today. Like, it was not even allowing me. So I remember going downstairs and telling my husband, I said, I think I need to see a professional. Because these thoughts, and they kept coming. Like, I would get up, then I had a headache. And I'm like, if I don't do something with these thoughts, and at the time I didn't feel like writing, because for years, that's what I would do is I would write up my pain, I would write out stuff. And it was trying to present the opportunity for me to end my life and go be with my mom forever. Doesn't that sound appealing? I mean, you always wanted to be with her. And now, I didn't even, when the thought came in, so no, I didn't have, I could take some pills, or because immediately, like, I rejected, I was like, I'm just in pain. I just want to grieve. So I'm like, these are not my thoughts, but they kept coming. Like a barrage, like it just kept, okay, well, yeah, you remember when, you started that prayer group at the school, and yeah, so you did all that praying, and you did a study group, and you helped people pass tests, and, where's your help? And what? And I'm like, and it was a house full of people that loved me, but I chose to go be in the room by myself because I wanted to, so that pain doesn't allow you to even see what's around you. You can't, and it messes with it alters your perception. And so I told my husband, I said, look, I need to go see a professional because I don't know these thoughts that I'm having. I said, I don't know. And I didn't know if it was normal. Like all my nursing knowledge, when you're in an active situation where you're dealing with pain, raw and real, my little nursing knowledge, most of it was gone. I just said, I'm like, I just know I need help. I told him, flag on the play. Whatever I needed to say to get you, I need some help. So I did some research. And I wanted to find, because it was scriptures that were coming to me, but they were distorted. Like it wasn't like, no, that's not what that means. People have two decisions. You can either embrace the pain and go through that process, or you can decide to disconnect. And if you stay disconnected long enough, you go from feeling that in that helpless state, because I was at a state of helplessness, because I'm like, I can't even stop these thoughts. And I've always had a pretty strong mind. That's how I made it through. Like I had to be, and I couldn't even compartmentalize. So I stopped. So when I was feeling helpless, I knew that I could ask for help. But if you stay helpless long enough, it gets a little deeper and you end up in hopelessness. And hopelessness leads to suicide a lot of times. When you decide, I'm done with this life. So you can either try to go through life on life's terms where things are happening now, or you can decide that you're done. And I knew I couldn't be done. Like I knew I had stuff to do. And that's the other thing. I'm like, I still have too much to do. You know, when you're busy all the time, I'm like, wait a minute. So I had to plan the funeral. I had a whole bunch of stuff to do. So I'm like, not today. I can't. Like, so no, I'm gonna need something to help this stop so I can get all these things that I still have to do, get them done. And so I looked for a Christian counselor because I'm like, I need you to help put those good things that were in me, because church was a very big part of my life. I need you to help set that right. Help me to set it right, because now stuff is distorted in my mind. And so I remember going to counseling. You know what I asked him? I said, what can you prescribe me? I'm not on any medications. Don't take them. I said, which I need something. And you know what he told me? No. And I said, oh, no. I said, you don't understand. I said, I need something. I said, you can start below 12, 25 milligrams, whatever you need. And he's like, no. I said, we need to work through this process. And I'm like, no, because I'm ready. I want to disconnect. Now, I really value professionals, and this is why. He didn't really know anything about my background. He didn't know about my parents and the substance use. But that's still the way I was acting. That was me not dealing with it. It could have opened the door to a whole bunch of other stuff. He said no. And I remember sitting there, and I remember one counseling session, all I did was cry while he opened the Bible and read scriptures. Now, I didn't even understand, and I'm like, I can't. And he said, no, you're going to be fine. And I said, how? He said, well, you're still going forward with life. And I'm like, no, I'm not going forward. What I need you to tell me to do is how to now adjust and adapt to the business of life. Because now everything is feeling like a chore. It's hard for me to get up. He said, but you made it here. You know, you got your flour in here. You know, all this stuff. You managed to grab your flour. I was like, I keep 3 in the car. Okay. I will not be without my flour ever. Hair might not be combed, but a flour shall be in place. Okay. That is just that is my signature. Yes, it shall be. So as we go through the process, it was like 6 counseling sessions, and I was ready for that quick, come on, help alleviate, and he helped me go through it. And he also explained something to me that I think was the key for me. The key was, because people would say, I remember going to the bank, and my mom, she did not have insurance. So I'm going to the bank, and you have to pay for them to dig the hole first. This is just from my memory. And I'm in there, and I'm in the bank, and I couldn't even speak. I just gave them the paperwork. And I stood there crying because, you know, this was within the week of her passing. I was like, I can't even. And he looked at me. He said, I'll be right back. He went back and made some phone calls. The lady comes out. She said, oh, yeah, my dad just passed a week ago. And I looked at her, and I'm like, you at work? I said, I didn't understand how people. And she was like, it's going to be okay. And the manager, you know, people hugging me like there was a whole bunch of these are all strangers. And I'm like, I said, I just didn't understand. I'm like, how are you functioning? So what my point with this is that people, you know, you carry things a different way. And what he explained to me is that our relationship had a lot of layers. because I didn't just lose my mom, but in a sense, because I rose and reversed, I lost my child, I lost my sister, I lost my best friend. So I lost on so many different levels that it wasn't just like, because as a child, you do expect to bury your parent, like that's the natural order of things. But it felt so much deeper than that. And then because of the history, because I hadn't lived with her from the time I was 8 years old, because of that history, I'm like, I didn't even grow up in the house with her all the way, so there's all those different pieces and things that I didn't have. And to me, that was like the most freeing, like it allowed me to it still hurts me sometimes now, because I'm like, oh, I lost, or because I'm approaching, she was 51 when she passed, so yeah, I'm not there yet. I don't want to allude to the blessed. That's gonna be that's gonna be in the next decade. But that's because I want to see, how you look, how your mom looked, and you might look that way, or you might, so how you see. And I'm like, she's not here anymore. So I lost so much when I lost her. So in my book, it's the Crack Chronicles, Dissection of a Demon. I didn't want to just leave people in the pain of it, because I did come out. But I'm very human. I mean, it still affects me. It still hurts. People want to be able to pick up their phone and call their mom. Like, after my mom passed, I couldn't be on social media. That happened in January. So Mother's Day was coming, her birthday, and I'm like, and not because I was jealous that people had their moms, but I'm very happy for people. Like, I'm a natural encourager of people, but to see other people's moms and I couldn't see mine. Like, it was just so all the different things that I had to shut down, and I'm like, oh, this is if I'm going to get well, I have to, and I thought I would go inpatient. So I kept asking him for all this stuff he just wouldn't give me. So I never ended up on medication. I didn't go inpatient, but I did walk away with some understanding that I had to go through it, because I was just trying to, like I did everything else, let's give me the Band-Aid to stuff this down. Let me cover it real quick so I can go out in public, basically. Let me just, so I can finish doing what I'm doing. And then later, maybe I could think about it, or whatever happened, so I could think about it. So when my book has 3 sections. It's the way in, the way through, and the way out. And I write everything in first person. And what does that mean? So when I was in the recovery community and people kept coming up to me, and I just started going there, going to the meetings even after my mom had passed, just because I love how they support each other. Like, there'll be a person with 2 hours clean and they standing ovations, and I'm like, this is great. Like, I wasn't everybody. If I read the page that I'm supposed to read, can I come here and let you know that I finished one chapter and you'll clap for me like this? Like, it was just like the support that they had. And so I just love that community. I'm like, there's a lot of support here. And I'm like, oh, no bridge can stand without support. No bridge can stand without support. So as I started, when I would hear their stories, I'm like, oh, so they had, like, there was heroin. So in my book, it includes all drugs, even though it's called the Crack Chronicles, because that was my initial interest, but it includes all drugs. It is very poetic in nature. There is no profanity in it. It's just very real and very true. I talk about the dream I had, which I kind of knew that I needed to write a book, because at the time I was just writing, and there was just a line of people waiting for me at a book signing. And the lady came up to me and she said, how did you know? And I was like, how did I know what? Just basically that they needed a voice, somebody to talk about it. And I think on both sides, where I do identify, what I guess when I got my documentation from Child Protective Services, it had me classified as a child victim or like a survivor. Where I do identify with that, there's the other piece is that I do see people with addictions as, people as human. And that there was something of personality that they had even before this happened. And I like to attempt to be helpful in restoration of that. So having said that, we are getting close in time. I want to share one of the pieces that I wrote. And it is called Crack Reparations. This this particular spoken word piece, and this is all this, they're all in the book, but this particular spoken word piece is one that when I go speak at recovery places, they want me to come, this is what they want to hear. I mean, people have had recovery parties, like 10 years sober, and they want me to come there and say this poem. So just know the difference is my mom is now no longer among us, but otherwise. But hey, it's a little spoken word etiquette. If you hear something that you like, you can, this is the snapping, like, or that resonates with you, or nothing at all. This is completely okay. Okay. So this is Crack Owes Me Reparations. I know all about vengeance and the therapy of time, but with pain as my only witness, I must collect this fine. For the mother I once had and the father I loved so much. Crack, you made them fall prey and you hold them still within your clutch. So don't look at me like that as if you don't recall. When 18 years ago today, you initiated their lifelong fall. I'm owed emotional and spiritual repair for the virginity you stole because my father needed to feel you and felt that I should fund his Jones. I'm owed cosmetic surgery for the keloid on my left knee because mama had one of her parties and left broken glasses to comfort me. I want the countless return railways because mama always put you first for the times of shut off water when I couldn't wash or quench my thirst. I want the full course meals for the times we had no food and the times I walked barefoot because I had no shoes. I want the childhood I never had and the life that wasn't mine for all that should have been. Crack, you owe me hefty funds. I'm owed unlimited strength, for you have made my father weak. For weeks he'll feed on you, for days he will not eat. Crack, you took away his smile, the one thing that belonged to me. See, for you he sold my car, and all I have left is his memory. I haven't seen Daddy in 5 years. I don't even know if he's alive. He hit rock bottom 7 times, but still reveres you as some prize. Crack, release my daddy. Make him the man he once was. Return to March of 1988 before you became his only love. Shall I sue the federal government? Because someday, Crack, you will pay me. I keep an itemized statement, for I must live your debts daily. This is my final stand, so I speak with desperation for a future that can never be. Crack, you owe me compensation. Will you dispossess my family and free them of their habits? Release the fiends and the thieves. Don't keep them tricks and addicts. You've been around for far too long. Yes, you've hurt me way too much. Your fascination with my lineage strongly resembles sadistic lust. You enticed me with your money, then you trapped me in your hell. You took the only man I loved and gave him life in a federal cell. Will you leave me nothing? I want success without the shine. I demand vast compensation. Produce all that should be mine. I want proper nourishment for the sugar sandwiches I ate. I mean, heal me for times I got sick when we didn't have clean plates. I need the trips to Cedar Point I can never take with my mother, because you made her your slave when you knew how much I loved her. I want all the rites of passage, the small things to brighten my day. I demand every single word mama was too doped up to say. Restore my cousin's innocence. She was only 5 years old when her older cousin raped her, transmitted disease, and marked her soul. When is it ever enough? Is there ever too high a price? I must apologize, Crack, because I'm asking you to feel when all a demon knows is how to possess, distress, and kill. Erase the filth I once called home within a house so full of roaches. Restore my childhood dreams. You owe me life in double doses. Do you not know how much it hurts to look my mother in her eyes? To know I cannot save her, and because of you she will die? I savor the sound of her voice, and in my heart I say goodbye, because this just might be the night that she might overdose and die. Crack, this is a personal beef, reserved strictly for me and you. I will not rest till you are extinct and I receive what is my due. You must rot for what you've done. You're a manufactured form of death, and I will implement your ruination even if it takes my final breath.